The Tennessee Titans to me is the Portland Trailblazers of the NFL.
All right, I'm listening.
I feel that there's a clear ceiling. When I look at the rest of the AFC, while yes, it's a good team. Portland always, I mean, you had CJ McCollum, you have Damian Lillard, you have a good team, but it's hard pressed for me to look at this team and think, oh, that's a Super Bowl caliber team. Yes, you have the best running back in the league when healthy and Derrick Henry. Yes, you have some solid piece on the defense, but and Ryan Tannehill has been better than expected. He's been okay. So it's like, to me, this team is always going to be good in the regular season. That's just how they are. They're a good regular season team. When you have a player that could potentially run for 3,000 yards in a season or more, like I get it. And when you have a once in a generational running back like him, yeah, and you have a good coach in Mike Vrabel, but it's just, to me, I don't expect. I expect what usually happens. I expect them to make the playoffs. They may be the first round team. They may not. Like I expect them to be incredibly dominant and not incredibly. I expect them to be really good in the regular season. People say, well, the Tennessee Titans, this could be their year until they get and meet a Ravens, until they meet a Bills, until they meet a team that is leaps and bounds better than them, and they just get waxed. You know what I'm saying? So do you agree with my sentiment? I just feel like every year they have high expectations, and then it's just like, oh, well, you know.
All right, so I'll only disagree with the fact that I think when they lost, they 2 out of the 3 years they lost to the Super Bowl, like the AFC Super Bowl representative. Mm-hmm. They lost to the Chiefs. They lost to us, which we lost to the Bills, and then they lost to the Bengals, who went to the Super Bowl too. Yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily say they're a regular season team. Now, to help your argument, you could say they lost their first game the past 2 seasons, which
yes. And last year it wasn't a blowout, but it was horrible. I think they had 3 turnovers within the first.
Yeah, both games weren't blowouts. I think they lost by a touchdown. Mm-hmm. No. They lost by less than a touchdown, I think, against the Bengals.
Yeah, I think it was by
3. They lost by a touchdown against us. Because Marcus Peters caught the pick and we, did the stuff on the midfield. But anyway, so I don't think I would say they're a regular season team. It's hard when you go against certain teams in the playoffs. Like us, yeah, they beat us, so we want a revenge. The Bengals, I told people the Bengals defense was better than they thought. And I also told people when the Bengals were bad, they played the Titans the year before and they contained Derrick Henry. Yeah. And if you can contain Derrick Henry and make Tannehill beat you, you see what happens. He's going to throw you the ball. He threw Eli Apple a pick off of a screen. Mike Hilton. It was Mike Hilton who jumped that. Excuse me. But what, he had 3 picks against the Bengals?
Yes, and I think 2 of them was back-to-back drives.
Yeah, so you make Tannehill beat you, he's going to win a game for you, unfortunately. So I wouldn't say that. I just think Tannehill can get exposed is what I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off. I agree. And that's kind of where I was going to go. I feel in the playoffs, that's when your quarterback has to shine. I mean, there has been instances like your Ravens when Joe Flacco won, but Joe Flacco had one of the best runs we've ever seen in the playoffs. Eli Manning, we know how he turns up in the playoffs, but he also had, just like those Ravens, those Giants that had historic defenses. But if you look, almost every, except for maybe that Peyton Manning year, but that's when, Super Bowl 50, when they played Cam Newton and the Panthers, the quarterback has always played at a all-time level. You know what I mean? So it's like, maybe that's one of the biggest reasons why they kind of flame out in the playoffs, because it's easier to just load the box. And if Tannehill beats you, he beats you. We're not going to let Derrick Henry go crazy. That's what we saw. Now, injury probably played a part last year, but if Ryan Tannehill goes crazy, hey, you deserve to win. That's kind of like, again, if Gary Payton II goes crazy and scores 30 points. Like, hey, congrats. So that's just where I see it. Do you think that if they don't, or if they have another game one flame out, do you think that changes have to be made?
Well, this is what I would say. I think they took a step back by trading AJ Brown. So, I mean, technically changes already has been made. And I wanted to throw this about the defense point. I feel like the defense isn't more so as talented as just Mike Vrabel is just a hell of a defensive schemer as a coach. Because if you look at that defense, it's not loaded with crazy talent. It's just Mike Vrabel knows how to scheme it with what he has really well. Like the secondary wasn't that talented, but he made it work because Mike Vrabel just hella smart on defense. So offensively, they brought in Traylon Burks. He was cool at Arkansas. I'm interested to see how that works.
Yeah, I think they're putting a lot of pressure on him. Like they expect him to come in and be next AJ Brown. Now, yeah, we didn't know AJ Brown was going to turn into that, but they're expecting that from like out the gate. And I don't know if he's. Yeah, we know how good he was in Arkansas, but I don't know if you can get to that out the gate, especially after even though he didn't really do much for the team, but you lose AJ Brown and Julio in the same, like, nah.
Yeah, and Robert Woods, we saw he's a really good number 2, but in Buffalo, he wasn't really a good number 1, which is why he had so much success in LA when he became the number 2. Yeah, and I like to piggyback on what you're saying. They putting a lot of pressure on him. They're treating him like Corey Davis when Corey Davis got drafted top 5 out of Western Michigan.
Yeah,
and we saw how that backfired. So I'm interested, like I said, to see how Traylon Burks works out. But in my opinion, they're already starting to make a little bit of changes. So to answer your question, yeah, I think more drastic changes will happen if the same result happens.